3 bone-chilling truths about how the Holy Spirit revives your soul when faith fails forever. The air was electric that night, crackling with whispers of the unknown. People strained to hear tales of the unspeakable power waiting just beyond their grasp. They huddled in the dim light of a flickering candle, faces ghostly pale, eyes wide with anticipation. What would happen if faith, their lifeline, ever slipped away? Panic washed over them, a tidal wave of fear and desperation. Hope felt so far away, yet hidden within the shadows lay the soul's most powerful revival. Strange stories had begun circulating through the small town, tales of individuals who, when faced with their darkest hour, stumbled upon the mysterious touch of the Holy Spirit. One woman claimed she saw her grandfather's spirit, shimmering like a mirage in the fading twilight, as he whispered comfort in her ear the very moment her faith hit rock bottom. "I felt him," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks, "like he was right there, reminding me I'm never alone." The town gasped, chills racing down their spines as they grasped the meaning of her words. As night deepened, strange occurrences began to unfold. A young boy, riddled with doubt after losing his mother, wandered into the abandoned church at the edge of town. When he emerged hours later, he bore an expression that left everyone shaken. His eyes held secrets, a knowing look that pierced the hearts of those who saw him. "I went there to cry," he said. "But something spoke to me. It felt like a warm embrace." His words hung in the air, heavy with possibility, ripe with anguish and connection, but curiosity elevated to a fever pitch when the local preacher collapsed into a trance during morning service. His body trembled, and gasps echoed through the congregation as he began reciting scripture in an unfamiliar language. No one could understand the words, but the atmosphere twisted like a storm, crackling with raw energy. Could he be channeling a divine message? When he finally awoke, he looked different, as though he had touched the face of God. Silence fell over the crowd, shock painting their faces. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the candles sputtered and the walls echoed with murmurs, theories started flying. Was the Holy Spirit truly sending signals? Or were these just coincidences? Shadows danced in the corners of the room, twisting like secrets begging to be revealed, leaving behind a trail of unease. Just as the tension reached its peak, a loud thud broke the silence. A book had fallen from the shelf, opening to a page marked by a burning candle. "Revival awaits those who dare to seek," it said, the words soaking into the hearts of the listeners, who now felt a vibrant pulse of longing for answers, for connection. What could these truths mean? And who or what was waiting for them in the depths of their beliefs? The candle's flame flickered wildly, casting long shadows as the room held its breath. Whispers filled the air, every word heavy with fear. No one dared to glance at the book again, its message hanging over them like a dark omen. What revival could possibly await those who sought the truth? The preacher stood, dazed and changed, eyes flickering with wild energy. He looked out at his congregation, a mix of reverence and dread reflected in their faces. "Brothers and sisters," his voice trembled, "there is more to this than meets the eye." His words reverberated through the room, causing heartbeats to race. "A force, an unseen force, has gripped our town." Gasps erupted, gasps thick with disbelief. This is not just a coincidence. Something is trying to reach us." Outside, the wind howled like a pack of wolves, cold and biting, echoing the emotions swirling within those walls. They huddled closer, searching for warmth against the chill that seeped through the cracks. As he spoke, a tremor ran through the preacher's hands. "You must be willing to open your hearts and seek what lies beyond." Suddenly, the doors of the church swung open, creaking on ancient hinges. A chill swept through the congregation as the figure of a man appeared, silhouetted against the moonlight. He looked disheveled, eyes wide with panic. "They've come for me!" he shouted, rushing forward. I felt them voices, shadows. Everyone recoiled, a tidal wave of fear washing over them. The church had always been a sanctuary, a place of safety. But now, it felt like a cage, walls closing in as paranoia seized their minds. "Who?" the preacher managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. "The lost souls." The man gasped, breathless. "Something is happening to them, and it's spreading. I saw flames. I heard cries. They want to take their grasp, to pull us in." The room went deathly silent, fear knitting their brows tight. What could this man have seen? Would they all be sucked into a nightmare from which there was no waking? A woman in the back of the room rose, trembling. "You mean the boy? The one who walked into the church? He's been acting strange since he came out." Murmurs surged, a tangled web of dread. What had the boy experienced? Had he taken a step into that hidden world, embraced by something greater than their understanding? The preacher steadied himself, stepping towards the man. "We can help you, but we need to understand. Speak to us. What did you see?" As the man opened his mouth to answer, a sudden crash erupted from behind the church. Glass shattered. The crowd jumped, screams echoing off the walls as everyone rushed to the windows. Outside, shadows moved, swirling in a dark wave beneath the moon, as if seeking entry into their sanctuary. Gasps filled the air. They were no longer merely shadows of fear, they were tangible, alive, and they were coming. Questions raced through their minds. Had the boy awakened something? Or was their faith dangerously teetering on a precipice? The preacher raised a trembling hand. "Stay calm," he shouted, though uncertainty flooded his words. "We must join together in prayer." They huddled, joining hands, the warmth of human connection offering a fragile comfort against the chaos looming outside. But deep down, doubt gnawed at them. Could prayer truly protect them from the unknown? As they prayed, a deafening sound echoed around them, throbbing with an unearthly rhythm, like a heartbeat of the earth itself. The shadows pressed closer, ready to engulf them all, and just when surrender seemed inevitable, a flash of light exploded from the pulpit, blinding them momentarily. The pulse of that light felt like a surge of life, threatening to pierce through the darkness. Then, as abruptly as it began, everything turned mute. The shadows halted, suspended in time, and the light faded into a stillness that felt alive and breathing. But what did it mean? As their hands fell apart, the heavy silence hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. What had they awakened? And how far would they have to go to find the resurrection there? Souls were craving? The answers loomed, just beyond reach, shrouded in mystery and trembling with suspense. The silence stretched and twisted, a living thing, heavy with dread. Everyone's eyes darted nervously, searching the darkness outside, where shadows roiled and slithered like predatory serpents. Breathless anticipation held them captive, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then came a low hum, rising from the depths of the church. It resonated with an ancient power, vibrating through the pews and rattling the stained glass windows. The preacher straightened, a spark of defiance igniting within him, illuminating the wild energy that danced behind his gaze. "We will not bow to fear," he proclaimed, stepping forward, as if challenging the encroaching darkness. "We are gathered here in the presence of something greater." The congregation shuffled, uncertainty shimmering in their eyes. Did they believe him? Was this faith strong enough to fend off whatever was lurking in the shadows? Suddenly, a voice cut through the air, sharp as glass. But at what cost? It was the man who had stumbled in, his eyes wide, terror etched into every line on his face. "You have no idea what you're asking for." The preacher's brow creased. "Then tell us. What do we face?" The man took a shaky breath. "The boy, the one who walked in here. He faced them, and they infected him. Now he carries their whispers like a disease. We can't just pray and hope they leave us be, they want souls, and they will take them. Panic rippled through the room, breaths hitching as they turned their thoughts back to the boy. It was as if they could feel him tugging at their consciousness, his presence a faint echo. What transformation had he undergone? Would that darkness settle amongst them? The wind screamed through the church's creaking rafters, a cyclone of angst. Outside, the shadows melded and churned, taking form an undulating mass, coalescing into something more substantial. As if sensing the congregation gathered in prayer, they pressed against the threshold, eager to breach the barrier. Then, with a sudden and visceral strike, the inside of the church felt alive with a frigid gust, snatching the candles from their stands and extinguishing their feeble flames. Panic erupted. A woman screamed, and the rest surged toward the back as shadows poured through the cracks. But the preacher seized the momentum, his voice rising above the roar. Stand firm. We have the power to resist. He clasped his hands as the cloud seemed to roll in, thick and dark, shadowing his form. We must shout their names, draw the light from within us. Confusion mingled with instinct. They hesitated, buried under the weight of uncertainty, yet some began to murmur the names of long-forgotten saints, others cried out for mercy and protection. Their voices swelled, battling against the encroaching shadows, and then a piercing scream shattered the rising cacophony. A figure emerged from the dark, arms flailing as it stumbled into the church. It was the boy. His eyes, once bright, now glimmered with a hollow void, as he began to chant in a tongue unknown to them. Leave. Leave this place. The chant twisted around the room, pulling them toward an edge of despair. As if responding to his call, the shadows thickened, surging toward the boy, and snaring him in their unseen grip. Fearing for his life, the preacher lunged forward, straining against the collective momentum of the crowd as they teetered between instinct and faith. He reached out, grabbing the boy's shoulders with a fierce grip. You are not alone. Fight it. Fight them. But just as their gazes locked, a flicker of something dark crossed the boy's face, and a terrible grin spread across his lips, twisting everything they thought they knew. The shadows danced around him, whispering promises of power and release. The air felt electric with the tension of loyalty and betrayal. Would the preacher stand by this boy, a walking vessel of dread, or would he condemn him and risk losing their only chance to understand the chaos? The church leaned into the confrontation, hearts pounding as the shadows dug deeper, seeking their toll, and in that moment, amidst chaos and uncertainty, the ground beneath them trembled, as though the very earth was about to reveal its deepest, darkest secret. What was beneath their feet, truth or deception, was about to emerge. The earth rolled like a beast rousing from slumber. The congregation clutched each other, eyes wide, breaths hitching. The preacher's defiance dimmed. He could sense it too, the stirring beneath the wooden floors, a pulse of dread that throbbed with every beat of their frantic hearts. Stay together. He shouted, but his voice wavered, threading through the air like a candle's flicker against the storm. Do not scatter. The boy's chanting grew louder, each word a dagger that ripped deeper into the collective anxiety. Shadows spiraled, reaching out like grasping hands, the darkness pressing in on them. Each glance at the boy forced their skin to crawl. What had he become? Droplets of sweat traced lines down foreheads, and though they fumbled with prayer, the shadows answered their desperation with laughter, a morbid echo that danced through the hollow church. Then, with a suddenness that brought a collective gasp, something shifted. A section of the floor cracked, splintering under the pressure of unseen forces. The ground moaned, and a foul wind burst forth, carrying the scent of decay and despair. Gasps echoed off the stone walls, every lingering note of faith was tested. Disbelief wormed its way into hearts masked by fear. Help him! A woman cried out, her voice trembling. He is our only hope. Hope? The preacher's stomach turned at the thought. The boy, lost in shadows, now seemed like a crater of chaos, proof that innocence could wither away under such weight. As he looked closer, he saw not just a boy, but a vessel, a bridge between them and the worst nightmare cloaked in darkness. A chill crept along his spine, his own fears mounting like an avalanche. "Stay back!" The man who had stumbled in warned, his eyes betraying his own bewilderment. "He's a beacon for what's coming. If we let it consume him, that's enough," roared the preacher, cutting through the rising timbre in the air. He tightened his grip on the boy, pulling him fragilely upward, as if their closeness could banish the shadows. "We will not abandon him." But the boy shuddered, his hollow eyes rolling back, revealing pools of night. "You should have left when you had the chance." His voice became layered, a chorus of despair spilling forth in words foreign, guttural, and thick, wrapping around the very essence of their fears. The ground trembled again, but this time, in response to the boy's ancient call. As if the earth itself was answering, the shadows melded, swirling into a furious storm, a cyclone of darkness ominously capable. The congregation screamed, the sound cutting through the shadows like a fragile thread. One old woman fell to her knees. "Forgive us, God. Spare us this pain." Her gestures became frantic as she held on to her rosary beads. Others joined her in prayer, voices rising and falling in a chorus of desperation, the very walls seemingly whispering back unholy confirmations. The boy locked eyes with the preacher again, this time clearer, yet pleading. "It's not just me. They want you all. They want your faith, your fear, and they will take what they can." Suddenly, the shadows hissed, growing impatient, and the church shuddered violently. The pews rattled, some began to topple, sending echoes crashing against the walls, while the lights flickered and dimmed until only a soft glow remained from the stained glass above, painting them in hues of anguish. And then, just like that, a figure broke free from the swirling mass. It was as if something was clawing its way into the light, a form outlined deeply in darkness. Everyone stopped. Breath caught in their throats. Each heartbeat was a countdown to uncertainty. What emerged could shatter everything they believed. The congregation's eyes fixed on the approaching force, bodies frozen in horror as they awaited the dark revelation. Would salvation flicker in the shadows, or would this new presence spell doom for them all? The figure emerged, cloaked in darkness yet somehow illuminated by an unearthly light. It hovered, not touching the ground, making the air around it feel both electrified and choked simultaneously. A low growl reverberated from the shadowy form, a sound not of this world, echoing deep within the bones of everyone present. "What is that?" Someone gasped, the words spiraling into the thick darkness. The preacher's heart raced as fear entwined with a flicker of resolve. He stood before this manifestation, clutching the boy who still convulsed within his grasp. "We must stand firm." His voice trembled but held the weight of his duty. As the figure advanced, it stretched long, its limbs distorting with every step. Faces paralyzed and panic lost all semblance of belief, prayers dwindled into incoherent whispers. The boy's fingers curled into the preacher's sleeve, his frail body vibrating with some primal energy. "You don't understand. It eats belief. Starves on hope." His words poured forth, desperation echoing off the crumbling walls. The presence slowed, studying them, and on the whispers of the crowd, it seemed to feed. "Faith is a feast for those who have none." The voice rang with 1,000 tones, dripping with malice and despair, reverberating painfully in their minds. Several members of the congregation stumbled backward, their gazes shifting between the preacher and the boy as if they were determining where to place their last ounce of faith. One man shouted, "We can fight. We have God on our side." The words felt hollow even as they left his mouth, swallowed by the darkness pooling in the front of the church. The figure laughed, a chilling sound, like glass shattering. "God, is he coming? Or is he already gone?" It pointed toward the stained glass, where the images of saints, frozen in sorrow, seemed to peel and warp. Suddenly, an unexplained breeze swept through the church, snuffing out the flickering lights and leaving them in suffocating darkness. Pockets of silence enveloped the terror-stricken crowd. They instinctively reached for one another, but the pervasive emptiness wrapped tighter around them. The preacher shook his head violently as if trying to rattle loose the nagging doubt. "No. We will not yield," he shouted, forcing himself to step forward, flanking the boy as if this united front could repel the darkness. "Bravery wasted," the figure hissed, its voice curling over the air like fog. "What can you offer me that I cannot take?" The shadows shifted, congregating at the figure's command, undulating like waves in a storm-tossed sea. "We offer faith," the preacher screamed back, words ripping at his throat. "We offer hope." Beside him, the boy began to recover, eyes wide and glistening with fear and courage. "Hope," the figure grasped at the word, its form flickering like a dying flame. "Hope is fragile, like a comet's tail. It brightens the night momentarily before plunging into darkness." With a sudden motion, the darkness enveloped them all. The walls pulsed as if about to explode, the floor quaked more violently than before, and cries of despair rose like sharp blades. "What should we do?" a woman shrieked, panic evident as the air thickened with dread. "Please. Someone guide us." "Light!" the preacher yelled, seizing the boy's gaze. "We must look for the light within us, no matter how small. We were created to rise, to defend against the night." Yet doubt had taken root, wrapping its icy fingers around their hearts as the figure bore down on them, its laughter now booming, shaking the very foundations of their faith. The walls cracked. Splinters of wood flew as the congregation held on to each other, but a split formed in their resolve. Would they cultivate the strength of belief in this ultimate moment when shadows threatened to engulf them? Or would they crumble under the weight of darkness, leaving their hopes to be devoured? A pulse of light flickered in the boy's eyes, a glimmer that might just turn the tide. But would it be enough to pierce the suffocating gloom that sought to claim them? As the shadows surged, a choice loomed before them, and they had no way of knowing if the decision they took would lead to salvation or doom. Would they grasp at what little faith remained, or let it slip away like sand through their fingers? The world around them twisted in the oppressive dark, suffocating all senses. Each heartbeat sounded like thunder, each breath a struggle. The preacher's hands clenched tighter around the boy, who quivered like a leaf in a storm. "Please," the boy whispered. "You have to believe." His voice, a thread of courage stitched into the fabric of fear, brought a flicker of clarity to the chaos. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, shadows swirling, threatening to engulf them whole. The preacher felt panic grip his chest. "Stand together," he shouted, and a few brave souls rallied behind him, their eyes wide with a mixture of terror and determination. From within the gathered crowd, voices began to rise. "We believe," one woman cried, her voice wavering but resolute. "We reject this darkness." The figure halted, those unnatural eyes narrowing. "Belief, mere words written on ashes." It thundered, the sound echoing ominously. "You think this power can protect you?" But something shifted. The boy's light grew brighter, his eyes shimmering like stars. It cast silver reflections against the cavernous walls, catching the attention of those around him. "It's not just words," he exclaimed, his voice gaining strength. "It's real. Feel it." As if prompted, the congregation began to hold hands, inching closer toward the flicker emanating from the boy. It glowed like fireflies igniting in the dusk. Their shivering grips began to warm, intertwining hope and belief into a single, pulsating force. The figure recoiled slightly, the shadows around it swirling faster, as if in agitation. "This light it cannot hold against the inevitable darkness," it hissed, frustration slicing through the air. "No!" the preacher shouted, heart drumming against his ribcage, mind racing. "We will not let fear overshadow us. We are more than the sum of our doubts." Together, a deafening roar erupted, and the walls shook violently, dust and debris cascading from above like confetti of despair. But the preacher pressed on. "We will shine. Shine like beacons on stormy seas." The boy's light flared, suddenly expanding outward, bathing the room in radiant warmth. Murmurs of disbelief transformed into cries of strength. "We can do this. Together. As their voices intertwined, the building vibrated, each shout a chisel carving hope, the figure thrashed, shadows lashing out as if to silence their combined strength. Fools! It snarled, as threads of darkness ceased murmuring around the congregation, trying to pull them apart. But they stood firm, refusing to yield. Doubt loomed heavy like a thunderhead, yet in every heart, conviction sparked. We are not alone. Someone shouted. We are never alone. The shimmering light moved like a wave, cascading over each person, merging their belief into something solid, something alive. The sheer force of their faith pushed against the figure, each heartbeat driving it back. With one final scream, the figure clawed at the air, shadows writhing in fury, but the light blazed brighter, an unstoppable force. Cracks splintered the walls with arcs of radiance, illuminating the room as it fought against despair. And just when it seemed the light would banish the darkness, a blinding flash split the night. The shadow figure froze, suddenly silhouetted against a roaring glow radiating from all around. But, in that moment of clarity, something unexpected happened. The figure's form dissolved into wisps of darkness, but not all of them vanished. They lingered, intangible yet eerily present, wrapping around the edges of their resolve like smoke. What is happening? The boy stammered, his gaze darting to the preacher for guidance amidst the chaos of vanishing shadows. The preacher frowned, sensing the shift in the air, a feeling like being watched not by the figure, but by something else. Something intimately familiar, something waiting. Is this truly their victory? Or had they merely aggravated a deeper, unseen threat lurking just beyond the edges of their newfound light? The preacher's stomach turned, a knot of anxiety tightening as he realized something much more sinister was yet to come, and as they struggled against the weight of their triumph, the flickering light began to dim once more. Would faith alone be enough to tackle the darkness lurking just outside their grasp? The flickering light grew weaker, vibrating on the verge of collapse. The preacher's heart raced. Panic skittered through him, quickening like the thud of wild hooves drumming against the earth. Hold on! He shouted, desperation stitching rage and determination into his voice. Around him, faces twisted in confusion, eyes darting toward the retreating shadows. The woman who had first shouted their belief now trembled, her hands shaking as she looked at the swirling darkness. What are we supposed to do? She cried, her resolve disintegrating like ash. We fight back. The boy yelled, his small face scrunched in concentration. Feel the light. We can't let it go. He closed his eyes, summoning all the strength within him, as if pulling energy from the very ground they stood upon. And as he did, something new emerged from the remnants of the fading glow, a pulse, faint but unmistakable, thrumming in rhythm with their hearts. Together. The preacher called, urging each member of the congregation to draw from that pulse. Their hands tightened around one another, fingers entwined in a fervent grip as they leaned into the warm energy gathering in their midst. It began to grow, feeding off their collective belief, rippling out like waves in a pond, but the shadows, sensing the shift, surged forward like a storm tide. The air thickened with a palpable dread, wrapping around them like icy fingers. You cannot resist me. The figure's voice echoed, deeper now, vibrating with a rawness that felt visceral. You are nothing without darkness. Is that what you think? The preacher shot back, voice laced with defiance. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to stand together. The warmth swelled, nearly alive now, bending towards the murky shadows swirling at the edges of their light. For a brief moment, it seemed that hope could disrupt despair. But then horror etched itself across their faces as the shadows jerked unnaturally, pulsing in sync with their shared heartbeat. The figure lunged closer, reaching through the thrumming glow with smoke-like tendrils, trying to tear them apart. Join me. It hissed, each word a biting chill. It will be easier. No. They cried in unison, voices intertwining like twine, a barricade against the impending tide. With that collective refusal, the light surged again, pushing back against the grasping darkness. The preacher felt hope surge through him, a palpable force stronger than fear. "We're not afraid. Our faith is our shield." Mixed among their shouts, something unexpected stirred. The boy's light split in dazzling colors, radiating against the cavern's damp walls. A kaleidoscope of warmth and illumination erupted, catching everyone off guard. Colors danced like auroras, brightening the gloom. Could it be? With renewed energy, the congregation pressed their shoulders together, focusing on each other, sharing their strength. The figure twisted in annoyance, shadowy fingers raking against the edge of their light but unable to breach it. Its screams flickered in and out of comprehension, frustration boiling into something darker. "Stop fighting!" It roared, rage radiating off it like heat waves, each word a chip away at their confidence. "You will give in." But the more it shouted, the more the light twinkled defiantly. Yet, through the frantic exchanges, something dreadful lingered in the air, an unease that whispered of betrayal, of doubt. The preacher felt it curl around him like smoke, clinging to his thoughts. In that instant, an involuntary gasp escaped his lips. Deep within the crowd, in the very heart of the luminous strength, he saw it, a shadow flickering just past the boy. And that flicker felt too familiar, too close. I think it's not just the figure, something else is here," he shouted above the cacophony. Panic struck, an electric current zipping through the congregation. Divisions began to form within their ranks. Fear crept back, threatening to sever the fragile threads of unity they had woven. As strained faces eyed one another, questions hung in the air like heavy fog. Could they truly trust one another? The boy reached out, desperation clinging to him. "Don't let go. Stay with me." But as shadows whispered and doubts emerged, the congregation's resolve faltered. They were standing on the edge of annihilation, caught between belief and betrayal. Will they fight off the darkness together? Or is it already too late? The chaos around them thickened like smoke, curling, twisting, suffocating. The preacher felt it press against him, the weight of fear prickling at the edges of courage. The flickering light pulsed as if in sync with the congregation's faltering hope. He glanced around, eyes wide, desperately seeking reassurance in the faces of those who had once stood resolute with him. A woman beside him, her voice quaking, whispered, "What if it's true? What if we can't fight this?" Her gaze haunted, darting from one trembling face to another as if looking for a beacon among shadows. "No!" the boy shouted, fervor igniting his small form. "We can't doubt. Strength comes from within us. Trust the light." But even his sparkling insistence faltered, the vibrant colors dimming in response to the encroaching darkness. The figure loomed nearer, its form shifting and swirling, meeting their fear with the chill of familiarity. "You've forgotten why you believe," it taunted, voice dripping with malice. "Every one of you carries doubt like a burden, waiting to consume you whole." With a sickening lurch, the preacher felt the truth in those words cut through the air, sharp as a jagged knife. He looked inward, grappling with his own lingering hesitations, grappling with the failures of faith he had buried deep. The air grew heavier, pulsating with despair. Could doubt truly be the enemy that would tear them apart? As the shadows surged, screams rang out from the depths of the crowd. A man stumbled backward, eyes wide and frantic, filled with panic and betrayal. "It's not just the figure. One of us there's a traitor," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger into the dimness. Gasps echoed, eroding the thin strands of unity like a torrent. "No! It can't be!" The preacher shook his head, disbelief washing over him like ice water. But uncertainty crept in, gnawing at the edges of hope. Faces turned, suspicion igniting like a wildfire. "Look at them!" the figure hissed, the darkness swirling eagerly. "You are not a dream, you are a nightmare. Divided, you will fall." The shadows snaked through the crowd, probing for fractures. Fingers tensed in the group as accusations swirled, voices turning against what once felt solid. "It's her. I saw her talking to it." A deep voice rang out, causing a ripple of mistrust. The preacher's heart plummeted. Each word was a shard of glass, jabbing at the fragile unity they had forged. "Stop," he pleaded. "This is what it wants. Don't let it in." But fear lapped hungrily at hope, and the shadows grew thicker, creepier, wrapping around fragile hearts. The boy gasped, tears springing to his eyes. "I can feel it. The darkness, it's tasting our fear." Struggling to counter the wave of uncertainty, the preacher urged them. "Get back to the light. Remember why you're here. We came together in faith. We don't have to fight alone." Yet desperation cracked his voice. Doubt clawed at him, rattling his confidence. What if he was wrong? What if their strength wasn't enough? Suddenly, a sickening realization dawned. The flickering shadow he'd noticed earlier wasn't just a whisper of darkness, it was a heartbeat, a pulse, real and frightening. It stirred within the thrumming glow, reaching for the very core of their strength. "Behind you!" he shouted, pointing into the glowing aura. But it was too late. The flicker transformed into a spiral of shadow, merging with light, creating a grotesque silhouette, a blend of both worlds, thriving on their doubts. The figure laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, echoing off the cavern walls. "You are now truly lost. Your very strengths have become weaknesses." Panic overflowing, the preacher felt the light flicker for the last time. As he grasped for the boy's hand, he could feel it slipping, his heart racing against the encroaching blackness. Was their faith always so fragile? Could they trust each other enough to stand against the growing darkness, or had they already sealed their fate? The shadows closed in, ready to swallow them whole. What would happen when the last light finally faded? The air crackled with an electric tension, shadows creeping closer as the preacher's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He reached for the boy, but the warmth of his small hand was lost like a candle's flicker snuffed in an unyielding wind. The preacher's breath caught. He felt as if the darkness had a grip on more than just the light. "Together!" he shouted, rallying the crumbling congregation. "We must hold on. Each of you hold your light. Don't let the shadows." But the panic had spread like wildfire, igniting the crowd into a frenzy. Voices collided, accusations flew, and the once tightly knit group unraveled before his eyes. Shouts of betrayal mingled with cries for help, spiraling into a chaotic cacophony of fear. "Stop! You're letting it win." The preacher's voice was strained, desperation tightening his throat. He felt as if he was standing at the edge of a deep ravine, teetering on the brink of an immeasurable plunge into despair. "Help me!" a woman screamed, her voice piercing through the uproar, but it was swallowed in the thickening haze. The preacher scanned the sea of faces, now twisted in doubt and darkness, recognition slipping away. Then, through the chaotic swirl, he spotted the boy. The child stood trembling, a single beam of light illuminating him briefly, as if the heavens themselves were pleading. "Preacher! It's getting worse. I can feel it in my bones." The boy's eyes, wide and terrified, echoed the sentiment that gripped the preacher's heart. What could be done? In a moment of clarity amid the chaos, the preacher felt a spark of pressure release in his chest. Maybe this darkness was revealing their true selves. It was a grim realization, but perhaps it would also show them the path to salvation. "Listen to me," he bellowed, forcing every bit of his faith into the words. "Doubt may surround us, but we are not alone. We each carry a flicker lighted together." But the shadows loomed larger. An icy breeze sliced through, carrying a whisper that prickled the skin. "The light is an illusion. Your faith is built on sand. No one can save you." The preacher's resolve quaked, the chill settling deep within. Doubts reared their heads like angry beasts, gnashing their teeth at the edges of his mind. What if they were truly lost? If unity had been nothing but confidence in the facade of faith? Suddenly, the boy fell to his knees, hands clasped together, tears streaming down his face. "I don't want to lose it. The light, we have to keep it alive." His voice was raw with desperation, a striking contrast to the other frantic cries that painted the room with betrayal. The preacher took a step forward, heart racing as the boy's words struck a chord inside him. Here was the moment and opportunity to bridge their fear, to reclaim the strength that had been buried under layers of doubt. Join him. He urged the crowd, his voice rising over the storm. Embrace your light. We fight together or not at all. Doubt gripped some hearts, and others hesitated. Yet, one by one, faces turned toward the boy, their fear slowly flickering with the faintest hints of hope. But as the preacher felt new life breathe into the atmosphere, the figure at the edge of the shadows hissed a sinister sound. It's too late for unity. You cannot conquer what already knows your deepest fears. The shadows surged forward, and the flickers of hope they had ignited staggered under the overwhelming weight of despair. The preacher felt it again, the doubt clawing at his heart, threatening to pull him into the abyss. Then, in that chaotic moment, an unexpected sound shattered the darkness, a singular, dissonant note echoing from somewhere deep within the crowd. It grew louder, more urgent, spiraling into the chaos. It was a chant, fragile but persistent, resonating in sync with the emotions swirling, fighting against the consuming shadows. Together the crowd began, voices hesitant but rising. Together, together. Would their chant rally against the storm, or would the darkness drown their last breaths of hope? As the shadows surged at them, something shifted within the preacher, urging him to hold fast. What had truly become of the light? That single note raised a haunting question within his heart. Was it enough to withstand the almighty force encroaching, or was it a desperate echo awaiting extinguishment? Silence reigned just for a heartbeat, then chaos erupted once again, and the ending of their fate hung precariously in the air. The storm raged outside, shadows twisting like angry serpents around the church. But from within, a flicker of hope began to shimmer, building against the tide of despair. The preacher inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of every terrified gaze on him. Together. He shouted again, the word rising as a rallying cry against the darkness that sought to smother their very souls. The boy, still kneeling, his face streaked with tears but burning with determination, raised his arms in surrender. We can bring it back. The light is in us. His voice echoed through the hall as more voices began to join his, weak at first, but gaining strength like a phalanx coming together. Together, together. They echoed, the chant swelling like waves crashing against cliffs, forging a bond where doubt and despair had once ruled. Each person felt the vibrations of the words ignite something deep within, something radiant, faith in themselves and in each other. The preacher felt the energy leap forward, illuminating the choking darkness for just a moment. In that flicker, he steadied himself, vision locking onto the boy. You are the cradle of hope. Let it rise. The boy's reply was immediate. We aren't alone. We can do this. His spirit radiated, and, trembling, the congregation leaned in. Shadows clawed fiercely at the edges of their united light. The dark figure howled in fury, but it wasn't flinching, it was losing ground. You will fail. It bellowed, voice laced with venomous hate, but fear trembled in its tone. Fear is all you have. A woman cried from the back, her voice slicing through the storm. It won't own us anymore. The preacher's heart soared. Each chant met the din of shadows with defiance, pushing them back inch by inch. Faith is our anchor. Together, we are unstoppable. The congregation entwined hands, the warmth pulsing like a beating heart. The boy, now glowing brighter, called upon every whisper of strength buried in their souls. Feel it. His eyes lit up, reflecting the glow around him. Let the light surge through. And surge it did. Radiance beamed outward, hitting the wall of shadows, splintering the night into glimmering shards. The darkness shrieked, humbled before their collective faith. The ghostly figure watched, disbelief morphing into rage. The preacher steeled himself, voice booming, we will not be taken. The chant grew louder, merging with the heartbeat of the earth beneath, syncing their very faith with the pulse of creation. Something shifted in the air. As the darkness roiled, the figures in the stained glass above seemed to shimmer and stir, watching over them, their own colors igniting in support. Light thrummed through the air, a tangible force chasing the shadows to the very edge where they struggled, trembling, and then, with one final cry, together, erupted as if ignited by the angels. The light blazed forth, and with it, a warm wave washed ever forward, engulfing the lingering dusk in a tidal wave of brilliance. The shadows howled, twisting as the energy spiraled outward, reclaiming the lost territory. The preacher felt their faith breaking through like a dam bursting. In that moment, the grim truth dissolved as the flood surged. The shadows flared, shrieked, then began to pull back, consumed by the insatiable radiance that welled up from within their gathered hearts, and just like that, silence fell, thick and rich, drowning out the panic that had once churned like a storm. Only the flickering remnants of shadows remained, cast out into the night, leaving behind a resonating hum, a reminder of what they had faced together. The boy collapsed into the preacher's arms, exhausted but smiling. The rest of the congregation fell to their knees, savoring the moment, then gripped each other, tears flowing freely. Tension gave way to relief, a sweet victory over despair, a bond forged in the furnace of fear. As dawn began to bloom outside, the edges of the sky softening into hues of promise, the townspeople stepped outside, bathed in the warmth of a new day. They looked at one another, hearts mending, souls revived. "Remember, the preacher said softly, kneeling beside the boy, "this was always about faith, about our connection. It's the spark that lights our path." People nodded. The shadows might return, but armed with belief and connection, they understood now they would stand firm. As the early sun kissed the horizon, they began to disperse, hope riding the air like a gentle breeze. In that sacred space, amidst the remnants of chaos, they realized not just what had been lost, but everything they had gained together, a family bound by faith, ready to face whatever came next. So let this day be a starting line, a vow to uphold belief against shadows, reminder that through unity, they could conquer the darkness time and time again. Now, if you've stayed until the end, here's what I need from you. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive story that will blow your mind. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and spread the word. And hey, flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. Let us hear how you feel. Finally, I'm counting on you to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.